this particular, got it. To talk to you a little bit about how we match people with the program is there will be an assessment of needs done prior to discharge from hospital. And this is done throughout people's stay, which on average will be about 6 months in the program. The kinds of services that will be provided daily will be counseling, medication support, medication monitoring, support around return to work and school. Daily chores will be one of the life skills. Connection to needed supports. That's a really important part when people leave hospital, is to ensure that they have supports and that they are able to connect with them, and that the supports are there for people. The other part of our work will be connecting people to either longer term housing or returning home. We will be doing that through daily on-site support, and we will also be helping people connect virtually to some of the needed supports that they may need. Our goal is to work with clients and many of their families to support people in gaining stability, independence, structure, and support them, as I said, to returning home or to more permanent housing. And I talked about the length of stay. On average will be 6. Some people may be a little bit less, other people a little bit more. But that will be the average length of time that people will be living there. If you could go to the next slide, please. Deborah, are you able to move to the next? So the 5 houses, as we talked about at the community meeting, are at 180, 186, 202, 204, and 28 Church Street. They're owned by Humber Hospital on hospital property and are intended for and zoned for health services. You know, in your response to questions about the zoning, because I know that we got a lot of questions about that at the community meeting. We wanted to explain here that these detached houses are zoned for a single household, and they very much operate it like a shared living space. And people will share common living spaces like washroom, living room, and kitchen. The residents of the houses will live together as a household with staff support, learning to live and return to living independently in the community within the context of a supportive family-like environment. And it's really intended to provide, number one, a program to support people's wellness and recovery, and a stable home environment to support their transitional needs. So the other question that we have had as well is, how did this come to be? And Humber River Hospital, these houses have been on the site for a number of years, and Loft inquired about their use. And as a leap of faith, the hospital renovated the homes, and we worked together to try and see if we could get a program plan and program funding to start a program. And a plan was confirmed in early summer. Can people see me? Okay. One of the other pieces that we wanted to share with you is that in response to some of the concerns from neighbors around not wanting to have people loitering in the front or people hanging out, smoking in the front, concern about the properties, there is a small parkette being created and put together in the back of the houses. And this, besides the backyards that have been provided, this is a space where people will be able to socialize, be able to have some outdoor space. We're hoping to use it for programming as well. We had different questions from people about the program and wanted to share with you what some of those questions have been and some of the responses to that. So one of the questions that has come is, why 5 houses? Why not just 2 or 3? And as I said, these homes meet a huge need right now in healthcare, and COVID has highlighted that. People need programs like this, and the intent is to provide intensive staff support on site. We want to support people returning to their daily lives. And this is 15 people, and again, 3 people in each house. Can it be phased in and not fill all 5 homes at once? And based on community concerns, the program actually paused and said, you know what, let's get the questions, let's hear from people around what their concerns are. Let's make adjustments to support people moving into the community. And so we are taking a phase delayed and phased in approach. This means people are not getting healthcare as quickly as we had hoped, but we also value very much what the community's concerns are and questions are. And we will start the program in January and begin to move people into the houses starting in January. The other question we got is this a rooming house or a halfway house? And no, this is a supportive housing program with 24/7 on-site support. A rooming house or a halfway house, generally what people do is they rent a room and are not necessarily engaged with a program or have staff support. This is, in fact, the opposite, is people are coming into the program because of the staff support and sharing the running of the household, supporting that, but very much focused on getting well and supporting their transition back to the community and to home. The other questions we've had is around neighborhood safety. And people going, you know, I'm really concerned, like who's moving in here? And this program is a healthcare program. It's focused on people with mental health challenges. As I mentioned earlier, we do an extensive assessment before people come to the program, and anyone with a history that is of risk to the community will not be a match for this program and will not be admitted. This and we're very, very thoughtful about matching people's needs to the support of this program. As I said, people in the program will have spaces in the yards, in the parkette. The days it'll be programming. And also as well in response to the concerns around just how this program will be implemented, safety concerns. We are working in partnership with the Humber River Security to support safety in the grounds, not only for the people who are concerned about that, but also for the tenants living and the residents living in the program. The other question that we have our clients receiving acute mental health. This is people who have gone to hospital with acute needs, but are now stabilized and ready for transition to the community. And we will continue to work very closely with their treatment supports while they are in the program. The other question was around zoning as well. And these houses are zoned appropriately for this program. We conducted a thorough review of the City of Toronto bylaws based on the concerns and the many questions that we were having. The City Bylaw Office has been to the homes and confirmed we are in compliance and are satisfied with how the homes will be used. So next steps, we want to start to have people move into the homes, and so we're planning that for people to move in January. People presently right now are staying in hospital longer than they need to. And people will be identified, assessed, and start to move into the programming slowly in January, February, and March. We are taking a slow phased in approach. It will give people opportunity if there are concerns, people have ideas, that as that occurs, that people in the community will have an opportunity to talk with us directly. We will continually assess where people are at, clients, to ensure that they are getting the support that they need in the program. We also, with any program that LOFT has, we will be evaluating the program. I know Deborah will put in the chat this phone number, this email for people who have additional questions after tonight. And also as well, there will be a survey for people in the chat as well, because you may have further questions after tonight that we weren't able to get to or weren't able to address. So thank you. Deborah, if we can go to the next slide. Great. So now at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mona, because we do want to hear from you what your questions and thoughts are. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Karen. I will try my best to go in order based on what we see in terms of the chat and raised hands. For those who have not seen, and depending on how you have downloaded Zoom, you can see the chat button and where you can type in your questions at the bottom, or you can raise your hands on the reactions button. And for me, it's on the bottom, but I also recognize it could be elsewhere on your screen. I see a number of people have already raised up their hands and answered the questions. So thank you for that. And at this point in time, this is the Q&A session of the meeting at this point in time. So I have first up, Luciano T. And again, I apologize. I'm reading it off according to what is on your screen at this point in time. So if I get the name wrong, I apologize in advance. So thank you.
Thank you. It's Luciano T. speaking. I'm a resident of Weston Village, and I attended your first session, information session. I'm also participating in today's session. I do have a concern with respect to effective community consultations. Your information sessions, I do not believe are what community consultation actually does mean. And I'm offended that you guys are doing this without consulting the community at all. By having these informal sessions for an hour or an hour and a half in length doesn't allow enough opportunity for the community to actively participate in the mental health challenges that Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and the globe is dealing with. So I have a problem with the lack of participatory process, allowing the community members to actively engage with Loft and Humber in regards to the listed properties. Because I live around the block from it, and I do have a concern where Loft is taking 5 properties. You're starting with 3. You've mentioned 700 successful sessions. In a previous documentation that you sent to us earlier, you've identified 266 successful transitions. So I don't know what the discrepancy is between the two. And maybe you can give us some information in regards to those 266 or the 700 that you're reporting this evening, of whereabouts have they been located? Are they in residential houses? Are they in buildings? Are they in institutions? And what part of the geographical area of the Greater Toronto area are they? Because Humber Hospital, the Church Street site location, has 6 hospitals that are participating in here. 2 of them are in 905. So I'm wondering where these the transition of these individuals who are recovering from mental health challenges, and we're integrating them back into the community, where in fact do they come from? And are they part of the Weston community? That's what I have concerns with. And in regards to your zoning, is there a report that the actual city has said, yes, we're okay with what you're proposing? Because based on the conversation that you've articulated with 3 individuals who are not family members residing in a household, that doesn't constitute a family dwelling for one resident. So I have a concern or question of validity about that. And is there any documentation that supports the requirement that it does meet the R1 zoning? So those are my things. But again, my number one issue is the lack of participative, effective community consultations. There hasn't been any here, and it's quite very disappointing to see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Luciano, for your feedback. I just want to be clear and want to make sure that we are answering a number of questions, what I heard. So number one, you've given us feedback that you don't think that this is effective community consultation. And this is information that we were sharing, and that definitely we are attempting to hear back from you. The other question that I heard is some of your questions around transitions from hospital, and the discrepancy is around the 2 numbers. Is that was your other question? And the third question was around zoning. I just wanted to make sure that we've heard your questions through, that I've captured them clearly.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of, I actually am happy to answer the first question. The 266 number was previously around transitions that we've made organizational wide, to transitions that were made in our housing. The 679 number is actually organizational wide again, and it's actually not only to our housing, but also to either transitions back home to long-term care residences, or other transitions, other residences that are actually not including loft housing.
Okay, so what I guess I'm looking for clarification is it 266 or 679 that loft actually transitioned to a similar activity that you've set up here in residential homes? Out of those 266 or the 679, were they out of a hospital care, and were they housed in residential homes in a community on an entire block? Are they in regular houses scattered throughout the community? Are they in apartment buildings, in condos buildings, or are they in institutions? So it's great to see those numbers, but I'd like more background information to validate where they come from and what's the success rate. And then with the successes that you've got of 266 or 769, how many were actually involved, and what was the failure rate?
Okay, the 266 number are organizational wide transitions to ARA housing. So those that did not fit with the other structures, because it's a variety of housing that we provide. So it will be either residential homes or apartment buildings and other locations, but they are mostly residential. Within the 679, there are other organizations like long-term care homes. It's very different. I recognize that
So the 266,
it's
to
quite
help you,
different, yeah.
Mona, the 266 hospital to housing that Loft runs.
Mhm.
The other numbers, hospital to other potential destinations that were not Loft housing. Those include home, in with their daughter perhaps, or long-term care, not necessarily to Loft destinations.
Okay, so then I would like to focus on the 266,
Mhm.
because those are the ones who are individuals who are welcomed into communities and into residential homes that they do not own or rent. So where are those 266 individuals? Where are those homes currently scattered?
That's a great question. I noticed another question in the chat about where are the other homes located. We have several different properties, 70 different sites, if I'm remembering, Mona,
That's correct.
across the GTA, from as well as all the way up to actually Aurelia, with the highest density in the Toronto area, especially where we are here with this project, as well as downtown Toronto west and east side of Toronto.
So are they all resident homes, single family homes?
They aren't all, but we certainly own many of those. But we also have small homes that that are exactly the same size as this, as well as larger buildings that may have 50 to 100 or 100 units.
So you own some of the homes? Is that what you're saying? Loft owns them?
We do. And we rent some as well, but we also own several.
Okay. So, and how many homes in the greater Toronto area or in Toronto that you have a whole entire block set up?
I actually see it as a great advantage to have an entire block, because the staff can easily move between one site to another. But we do have 7 sites in one exact neighborhood in downtown East by Trinity Bellwoods Park, but they're generally a block apart, not all together. But we have had high density of houses close to each other.
When did that start? Because the last meeting, we were told that the number of housing in Toronto for this kind of program is one house in a neighborhood. Now you're telling us there's 7 in Trinity Bellwoods? How come that information wasn't shared at the first meeting?
I think there was a question at the last meeting whether we have had this many houses exactly adjacent in one row, and we have not. But we have had houses and properties with as many people in one place, but we do own houses in the same neighborhood.
Okay, I'm seeing in the chat
Yes.
that
I think we can move on. I think we have the last question about zoning. Karen from Luciano, I just wanted to ask Karen to answer that question. And then we'll move on to Carolyn, who's next.
Okay, as I talked a bit about in the presentation, the special zoning for these hospital lands permits a range of uses, which includes and defines a detached house as meaning the whole of a building containing one dwelling unit and may contain a second suite. So it is approved under the zoning for the use of this particular program.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. We'll move on to Carolyn. Carolyn can ask her question.
No.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you.
Oh, I think we lost you again. You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm back again.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for creating the time tonight to chat. I know that the work that you do is really important and the folks that you support are especially vulnerable. And I'm very sad to hear that there's a delay of the folks moving in because of community opposition. I'm so sorry to hear that. And I'm so sorry that folks are going to be having to spend the holidays in the hospital instead of a new home. I want you to know that I know that there are, neighbors who have concerns on the call, and it's really great you're here to address them, but also know that there are those of us in the community that are very excited to see you coming and want to see how we can help you and the folks that are going to be living in these homes have a really healthy and happy transition. I've been a resident of the Weston Village neighborhood since 2018, and before that I lived in Mount Dennis, and I have been very much welcomed in the community. And just as I can't choose the neighbors that are moving in next to me or renting next to me, I don't think I can choose who's moving in on Church Street for this either. And I think that's really important to remember, and also to not make assumptions about the people that are moving in and what will happen as a result. And the questions I have are more about what can we do to make the transition easier for you and the residents? Will there be a community welcoming committee, or is there some way that we can help to make it a good transition for you? Yeah, so anyway, thank you again so much, and just know that there's those of us that are very supportive and recognize that this is something that needs to happen throughout the whole city to support vulnerable folks, and property values will not go down. I've seen a couple comments in the chat. Shelters and affordable housing open all across the city, and the property values are skyrocketing everywhere. So anyway, thank you so much again. And I want to respect others on the call to be able to ask questions. So I'll mute myself, but thank you again.
Thank you, Carolyn. Karen, would you like to answer Carolyn's question?
Yes, thank you very much for your comments. And there will be opportunities that we will talk with the community about in terms of how you could support the program. The other, Luciano mentioned about just mental health as an issue in the community and how to plan around that. There may also be the opportunity to share more education and information with the community and respond to some of the needs that people are concerned about.
Okay, great. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Karen. Rolina. I apologize if I pronounced that incorrectly.
We have a few questions. I think one of the things I want to talk to is about zoning. I understand how you believe that you need to help people. We have no problem in this community with helping anybody and everybody, but we do know emphatically that every one of these houses is zoned R1. Let me put it to you this way. It wasn't very long ago that a young lady in this neighborhood on Pine Street wanted to put a single suite, which you call a second suite, into her home, and Francis stopped it dead in its tracks. Francis is sitting there, so I suggest that you speak up. We have lived in this community for 40 years, not 2 years. We are not prepared to have 5 houses on this street with people, and I understand their issues and how you are going to have to deal with it, but I also know that security at its very best within the hospital sphere is pathetic. The security guards don't really react like you think they're going to react. The police in Toronto have already stated that they are not going to be coming to calls where mental health is involved because they're not qualified to manage them. So you are going to have to discuss with us how you're managing security. Telling us that there's a person on site, one person in each home, means nothing to us. We need to know definitively what you're talking about. We will not agree to 5 houses on the same street. I know because I worked downtown for a software house. It wasn't far from the park that you guys have 7 houses lined up. That's a pretty disparate neighborhood. Weston as a community, we have our homes and they are worth a lot of money to us. We have worked for many years and have put our lives into these homes, and we're not going to stand by and accept that people with mental health issues are going to live across the street. Not that we don't really actually say we don't want them there. We just know that the hospital has never in its entire life known how to control security. My husband has actually chased people up to Western Road and the 401 because security doesn't show its face. And he's trying to convince people with mental issues to please get back to the hospital. So you tell me, are you for real? Why do we have to go through this? There are lots of neighborhoods that you can distribute these homes through. It doesn't have to be 5 houses on Church Street. The other part of this is young children are going to school every day. Older people coming out of the hospital in wheelchairs are being taken for strolls up and down the street. What are you doing to us? Yes, we're very angry. We're not going to sit back and say, all this smarmy stuff about how we need to help people. Yes, we need to help people, but we also need to understand that this is our community and you cannot shove 5 houses on our street and think it's okay. Whoever the young lady was, that Carolyn who spoke earlier, she's been in this neighborhood for 2 years. Why don't you live here for 40 years and understand how the hospital has behaved towards its citizens across the street? The continuous calling we have to do because of one bad behavior or the other. Humber has not been a good neighbor. So we are not interested in all the discussions you're having tonight, taking up all our time and having your discussions and telling us what you think is good for us. We need you to also look at our side of things. You have not even had the decency to have a proper consultation. This 1 hour of Zoom here and another hour Zoom somewhere else is not the format. You know it, we know it. We're expecting a real meeting.
I just wanted to follow up on the zoning if I could. Further to the zoning, is it, I missed your name there.
I believe you're asking about Karen?
Is it Karen?
Yes.
Yes. I wanted to, I've looked at the zoning and basically that whole south section of the hospital is zoned R1 with exceptions. The exceptions are the lands for 180 Pine, which is under 249, that exception. And the other one is under 378. 378 is for 180 Church Street and 249 applies to the other houses. I don't see in there where it stipulates that you can use this for a multi-habitable use. And the other thing is, the way I see this is being used still as an extension of the hospital as institutional, not residential. So there's kind of a conflict there in terms of the way the zoning I see is being interpreted. And I don't agree with the way that it's being looked at. Secondly, going back years ago, consultation with the hospital when they were doing their expansion and amalgamation with the 3 hospitals at the time, which the one was also Western at the time, Northwestern. The houses along Church Street were always intended to be for single-family rental units, acting as a buffer between the hospital and the neighborhood. They were rented out to hospital staff, doctors, maintenance people, and people who had an association with the hospital. And historically, we've never had a problem with that. Those people have been good tenants. And as a matter of fact, there's one living right across the street from us right now. They couldn't be better people. So that was the original intent of these houses, not to allow them to become part of the hospital, extending its care. The care originally for anyone who had any mental challenges or issues of that sort were housed in the south section of the hospital and the red brick building behind these houses. That's where most of that use was taken care of. And we would not be objecting to that being used as that facility. And it would be not a bad idea maybe to reconsider looking at that part of the hospital for your purposes. I'm not sure how other people would feel about that, or the group that we've been working with, but that is something that you may want to keep in mind.
Thank you. There's some questions I hear, and I know that there's a zoning question, and I believe that we've tried to answer it as best as we can. And there's a security question that I'm going to ask Mike Orico to answer, because it's on behalf of the hospital. Oh, I'm being told he might not be on the call any longer. On behalf of the hospital, I think we'll have to table that and get that answer back to you. We're not able to answer the questions about hospital security for you.
Mona, and if I can just add to the zoning is, you know, it sounds like people are getting different information. We have done the review, and we actually, I have had, you know, the bylaw officer come to one of the sites, talk to us about the program. And so I'm just sharing with you what we are aware of around the zoning. And also that we've had the bylaw officer come by and not express any concerns. So I'm sorry, I don't have any other new information, but I just want to share that we took those questions very seriously and investigated to ensure that that we are meeting zoning requirements.
All right, thank you, Karen. We're going to move on. There's a question from Tony. And is it Cevicio? Deborah, I'm wondering if you can help me out here. I just want to make sure that I'm reading the right question. Or is there a question from Octavia first?
I think Octavia's question was raised first.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to read Octavia's question. Is to tell us, my question in this meeting is to tell us you're going ahead with this project, or will we, the immediate neighbors who will be impacted the most, be able to change the scope of the project?
Can you talk a little bit more, Octavia, about what you mean by that?
Well, what I mean is we've met before, we've had this discussion before, and what I've found is that these meetings simply tell us this is what we're doing with the houses, as opposed to, as Luciano has said, how can we use these houses within the community? As far as I can see, Loft is going ahead with turning these homes into transitional houses. What I understand is that people who are immediately impacted, so people who live on Church Street, people who live on Pine Street, people like myself who are at the corner of King and Pine Street, we are affected the most by these homes being turned into transitional housing. Loft has not had the decency to consult with the immediate neighbors about the use, the best use for these homes. That is my question and my biggest concern. This meeting is simply telling us it's done. Nothing you can do about it. We heard you the last time. You don't want to have 5 houses. You're going to transition 3. How about 1? Because at the last meeting, I think it was you or the other lady who said, historically, in other neighborhoods, they only have 1 house turned into a transitional type house. But in Weston, because we have historically been poor or depressed, you never thought or saw it fit to consult with us. So are you consulting with us tonight? Or are you just simply telling us this is what we're doing?
Octavia, I think if there are ideas that you're thinking about, we would appreciate hearing those. And I know that people are saying that it's going to have a large impact on them to have this program happening. And so to hear more about what you think the impact will be, and if you do have ideas or thoughts about how we can work together around that, I'd appreciate hearing those.
I hope you see as well that some of the very directly trying to respond to the issues raised in the other meeting we had, now having 24/7 staff, now having that we've really tried to directly respond to the concerns raised by the community.
Thank you. We will move on to, I believe it's Tony's question next. So I'm going to read that. As LOFT look for funding to deliver the program plan, will there be funding to compensate the market value gap that will now be created for the homes facing the 5 houses?
We do not see that this will have an impact on that. And no, we do not have funding for something like that, and have never been in that situation where we've been asked about that.
We are also feeling the buildings and homes look a lot better. They're a lot more attractive from the street. And we've also made beautiful space for our residents to be in the backyard. But we feel that the beauty and the aesthetic of the home is much improved. And so we're hopeful of what that will mean for people on the street.
Thank you. Next is Wanda.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was just typing up a few questions too on the chat line, but I just wanted to know, I just heard about this whole thing not too long ago. And when I would be driving around the area on Church Street and I saw the homes being renovated, I said, oh, great, maybe these homes are going to be sold and it's good for the area. But now that I found out that these are going to be halfway houses for people with issues from the hospital, I'm a little bit disappointed because, first of all, I'd like to know, was there a survey, or the government or whoever, LOFT, did they do a survey of the area? We have 5 or 6 schools in the immediate area. Was this taken into consideration? Because we have a lot of grade schools, elementary schools, and were they taken into consideration how the schools were going to be affected? Were the schools consulted that and told that this program is going to be put into the area and how it's going to affect them? Let's see here. I have some questions, and I wanted to know, because you said the houses are zoned into whatever they're going to be. Like, what is the name of this zoning for the houses, and the bylaws? What are the bylaws? You're talking bylaws. I don't know what you mean by bylaws, what the zoning name is, And you're talking that people are going to be moved into those homes in January. I thought the program was going to be started in March of next year. And you were funded by the province. I heard that you were funded by the province. Like, what provincial ministry funded you, and how did they fund you? Did they take survey? Did they do assessments of the area and decided to give you so much money? How much money did the province give you to do this program? And yet the residents weren't even consulted. And let's see, one more. And my last question is this a done deal? No matter what we ask tonight, is this a done deal? It's going through no matter what. And our area is going to be now put down because people find out about this loft program in the area. So our properties are going to go down. What about our property taxes? You know, like, these are things, if you're putting these programs into our neighborhood, then it's going to have a financial impact in the neighborhood too. And I was wondering if this was looked at. It's, you know, Weston, where I feel Weston's been a dumping ground of affordable housing, a lot of other programs and everything. And yet, and there's been a lot of crime in the area too. You know, we've been having a lot of crime, people coming, stealing cars from the driveway, neighbors catching, and it's always the same person. It seems to be the same person coming into the neighborhoods and going to the driveways and checking on the cars, and, you know, people having their cars broken into. Like, this is what is coming into the neighborhood. What has the government and your program done to
so maybe Wanda,
it's broad. And I've been in this neighborhood, like that other woman, I think it's Caroline, like, she's been in here 2.5 years. Yes, it doesn't matter. Yes, it does matter. I've been in this neighborhood 30 years. I raised my children here, and I know all my neighbors. And, you know, we have, I don't know. I don't think that there's been a good survey being done of the neighborhood and everything, and the government, however they came about funding this program, no one's heard anything.
so Wanda, thank you for your comments. The prevalence of mental health issues is across the city. You know, the most recent stats say that 1 in 5 people will experience a mental health issue in their lifetime, and it's not specific to any neighborhood. This is something that is prevalent across our communities. LOFT very much is not looking at this as, you know, a community that, you know, is one that does value people, and our clientele are people that unfortunately many more times are the victims of crimes. And you talk about safety for kids at the school, and I think what you're highlighting is some of the stigma that our clients face and generalizations, and the incidents of crime committed by people with mental health issues. The incidence of them being victims is actually much higher. And the people that we're looking at are really people who are going to come in. This is a healthcare issue. They need support. And it's unfortunate, I believe, because people do have mental health issues, that people are, raising issues around safety and violence. And it's unfortunate because the majority of people who have mental health issues, the incidence of that is no higher than the general population. And we really want people to come into the community and have the best chance for their recovery. And I think if there's a way that we can work together to talk more about mental health needs, do education about mental health. I know LOFT in particular would very much welcome that. And if that's a positive that comes out of this program, we would very much like to engage with the community more about what some of the other needs may be.
Sorry, the next person is Art. Is Art on the call?
Art? Yeah, that's
Art,
me.
yes.
Sorry, I thought I had taken my hand down, but thanks for taking my questions. Excuse me, most of mine have been answered by now. And I appreciate your taking the time to organize this thing. I kind of agree with the earlier Luciano, I guess, said that this really does not represent consultative community consultation. And so that's really my issue is, many things are disputed immediately. And, community has to get involved. And so all of a sudden now there's a new situation, which I was, when I found out from the first flyer, I was shocked. I couldn't believe that I didn't hear about this before now. So I remain as shocked, and although I appreciate this format and have gained some very valuable information from you and other questions and participants, I still feel like it does not represent true community consultation. And so I guess that's my comment for now. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for your feedback. Okay, the next person is Vicky.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hi, I've been living in the neighborhood all my life, so all my 41 years. And I'm very disappointed in the Weston community's not in my backyard attitude. I'm very, very disappointed. Loft has had a very wonderful reputation when it comes to your housing programs, and you wouldn't just put clients who would be a danger to the community in your transitional programs. You vet your clients very thoroughly, and I really don't think that the residents should be all up in arms about this. Yes, there may be some glitches in the beginning as the program is being worked out, as in any housing program, but if people continue with this not in my backyard attitude, where do they expect people to live? The housing crisis is just going to get worse. Torontonians with mental health issues are amongst the highest of the vulnerable. Nobody wants to house them because they're scared for no reason. I'm just very disappointed in our Weston community with their not in my backyard attitude.
Great. Thank you for your comment, Vicky. I believe the next person is Gerard Kennedy.
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for holding the meeting. I mean, I think, the people who are adjacent, I can understand they're going to be more apprehensive, but the reality for, and I guess since we're going there, I mean, 25 years in this neighborhood, just around the corner, but there's never been a property devaluation because of this type of housing anywhere, anytime. So, I mean, and I think, law can't indemnify people. That's not either practical or whatever, but apprehension is unfamiliarity. And, one of the things I think we have to think about is we all have friends and family that need this kind of service. This is like rehab, and if you don't have rehab, we're worse off. What is Weston? Weston is a community that is blessed now with a transit hub that has been growing in terms of valuations, that has been losing its multi-res in terms of rooming houses and turning back into single family and so forth. And I think that means we have some obligations. There is some privilege there. And I would like to think that we'd at least address this open-mindedly. The people with mental health issues, and they are people first. And this is not a forensic unit. This is not somebody who's been convicted or did anything bad to anybody. I mean, chances are there's somebody's daughter, somebody's son, somebody that needs to just get a little bit further, but keeps getting that slippery rope. And it's not about appealing if you're across the street and you're worried about that. I think, my advice to Loft is let's hear a little bit more about how well you're going to keep up the buildings. How solid is your funding? Will you take on maybe a residential advisory group that can see how things are going so that it isn't going to be just a kind of a wall once people are in there? I think that's what, you're on institutional property, but Loft, in my understanding, doesn't behave like an institution. And I think it is, I don't know, unfortunately, I'm a little out of touch with what is the long-term goal for the overall property. And I understand the hospital spaces have been really rare. And somebody mentioned that there's a lot of folks almost bivouac there and different kind of things. And I think there's probably going to be a medium-term need. But we as a community, even though we've got density on either side, we're a low-density community. And what is our contribution to keeping Toronto livable? And we've had that hospital in the community. And again, I'm sympathetic if at times it's been rough on the people across the street. But I think the open mind that we need here is that if those folks had broken legs, we'd be wanting them to get casted. If they had a stroke, we'd want them to get rehab. And if they've got mental health issues, they just need a safe place. It's not going to intimidate a single child in this neighborhood. And I don't want us to become divided over this. And I think there's, and I feel a little bit of the apprehension coming from law folks too, because people feel strongly about this. But there is an education and a knowledge, and it's not who knows better at all. This is just a very human thing. And to get it at a human scale like this, within 2s and 3s, that's really a good thing. It beats the heck out of, some, quasi 50, 60 people somewhere. That just doesn't work. And supporting people and getting them out. So I think, I don't want to talk. I just think there's somewhere to get across the divide here. And again, my suggestion and my question would just be more about this, how solid the funding is, how long-term this is likely to be, because obviously those factor in terms of what can be done, and whether there's openness to having visibility and transparency for the community so that the community, advisory group or something else can know how well it's working, can be there with the suggestions to make sure that not just that the community is heard, but the people who are going to live here are going to feel part of the community for the time that they're there.
Thank you, Gerard. Karen, do you want to answer the question about funding and the long-term?
Sure,
support?
absolutely. So we do have base funding, which means we have permanent funding for this healthcare program. And I actually really appreciate your idea about, resident advisory that looks at potentially education. We can keep each other up to date, maybe look at opportunities to work together, support the residents that are coming in. So thank you for putting forward that idea. And I think giving context for the program, very much appreciated. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Karen. I believe there's a question from Kyla. Is each person staffed 24/7 or is one staff member cover all 5 homes?
So it's rotating. There are staff that will come in with different expertise, and we will be doing things like life skills teaching. We may be in one house doing counseling with a particular person. There may be fitness classes, different things. It depends on what people need. So it's not going to be a staff assigned to a house. They will be working together as a team to meet the needs of the 15 people.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, now we move on to James. If you no longer have a question, James, that's fine too. If you could just let us know, we'll move on to the next person. Okay, why don't we move on to Sonia Davis? Oh, Sonia's is in the chat, I'm told. Okay. All right. There's a lot of messages on the chat. Deborah, I'm hoping you can help me find it. Sonia's question.
I can read Sonia's question.
Thank you.
Sonia is asking, are these occupants tenants? Do they pay rent?
Great question. Yes, people will pay rent for the time that they're part of the program.
All right, next we move on to Louisa Giacometti.
Hi, thank you.
Okay.
I'm interested in finding out what kind of mental conditions are we talking about? Are we talking about depression? Are we talking about potential suicides? Are we talking about bipolar? What type of mental conditions are these people coming from the hospital and going to the loft houses?
Sure, that's a great question. So people will have a range of mental health issues. So it could be depression. It could be a mood disorder. It could be schizophrenia. We could see early dementia for people. So it can be a range of mental health issues that have impacted people's lives. And they've been in hospital for treatment for that and need structure and support to return to their lives. Does that answer your question?
Yes. And what age range? Any age range?
It will be 18 and up, and it will be primarily, adults. If we looked at some of, who is in hospital and the average age range from about 35 to 55 on average. Some people may be a bit younger. They may be a bit older as well.
Okay. And you said that they're up to 6 months. Where do they go after the 6 months?
We will have a combination of people returning home to their family home, to their own residence. And then we will have other people that will need longer term supportive housing. And so we will be in charge of supporting transitions to those kinds of programs.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to make a few comments. I have volunteered at the Toronto East General Hospital when they first had their crisis center set up for 10 years. And I'm just going to suggest that something like this, it becomes extremely important for a person who has a mental health problem because it weans them back into the community without them perhaps ending up on the street or the constant recycling of them getting back into a hospital setting. I know it sounds very scary to people, okay, but we're only talking about 15 people. that rotate through. And when you're talking about the security, if things should get out of hand, and I think Gerard Kennedy brought up an excellent point when he said, you know, get the community consultative group in there with the ongoing discussions about how things are going, if there are ongoing problems, they can be addressed. When you're talking about the schools nearby, this is an excellent way of educating about mental health. You've got a loft there that can go actually into the schools and talk about this and talk about different ways, alternative ways of dealing with mental health. Mental health has become so prevalent in our community, not just our community, our society, that something like this, and I mean, I understand if it were like a big, overwhelming number of people, but 15 and having the opportunity to have an open area at the back where people can congregate, you know, it really would help the individuals. And look, I know it sounds scary, but I live across from the Toronto housing units on Falstaff, and I've had shootings in front of my house. And I've had violence in front of my house. So this is nothing as compared to the stresses that we live with in our community. But I always keep in mind the 99.9% of the people that live there are just people trying to live their lives. Whatever happens, I always believe in second or third chances for people, because honestly, if we don't help each other, if we don't, and believe you me, I've had houses right across the street from the Toronto housing. They've been selling for over $1 million. So I wouldn't worry about losing value in your house. Honestly, my neighbor just 2 houses away sold for $1.3 million. So those, and when you're talking about break-in enters and vehicles and stuff like that. In my community, the rustic neighborhood one, we have that all the time. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's the people that are mentally ill. Maybe they are, who knows? But it could be other reasons as well. It's very lucrative to sell car parts in today's times. So, you know, I'm just gonna suggest that you give them a chance. Really, give them a chance, allow them to set up and be part of the whole process. It will truly, truly make a difference down the road. And one thing that I have found, and this will be my last comment, after having worked with a lot of people that have mental health problems, whether in an institution or just friends, neighbors in the community, it could happen to us. Believe you me, it could happen to anyone. It could be an illness. It could be a family situation that blows up. It could be abuse. It could be 101 things, and it could happen to any one of us. And having these kind of supports makes a huge difference to someone's life. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Louisa. I want to go back to James. We understand that we're having technical problems and we're not able to hear you, James. I don't know if there's an opportunity to type in your question in the chat. And while we wait for James, I'm sorry, we still can't hear you, James. I don't know if you're hearing us. While we wait for James to type in his question, Charlotte is the last person who has her hand raised.
Thank you. So this is my first time joining one of these talks. And I think what I'm hearing is that there's a lack of understanding of exactly what this program looks like, who's going to be there, what controls are in place. Is there some formal document that can be provided to the neighbors in the neighborhood to really understand what it is that we're looking for. I feel like we're in a place where, because we don't have that knowledge, there's a lot of fear. So is there a possibility for us to really understand what this program looks like? Sorry, what the program looks like, just so that we truly understand. I know it's a fluid situation right now and you're doing all these public consultations. I've also heard that, you know, it would be great if Francis Nunziata could actually discuss the zoning if we are in fact, from a City of Toronto perspective, if the zoning that has been done by the bylaw officer is in fact correct. But other than that, is there somewhere where residents can go to see and really understand what this program is, what the constraints around the program are, when people will be asked to leave the program, if, you know, if one of the things that the neighbors are concerned about are patients that perhaps, or program members that are perhaps wandering neighborhoods and things like that. Just more understanding in a concrete way versus just having these conversations that are seemingly very fluid still.
Absolutely. We want people to understand the program. We want you to get more information about it, about mental health. And so what do you suggest might be the best way to do that? We've done a mailing previously. What do you think would be helpful?
It's a great question. I really like the idea of having a community representation on maybe the oversight of the program, so that there is a way for the community to bring higher any concerns that are having and have that conduit between the program and the community, something in a formalized manner.
Nope. Thank you for your input, because I think what we're going to do is take some of the suggestions away. One is a web page. Others have talked about, you know, a regular update by mail. You've talked about, can we have, you know, ongoing information meetings? And so maybe if we can take these ideas away and come back with some of those options.
Community consultations.
And talk further with the community about what would be helpful, the forum for this.
Great. Thanks, Karen. I believe Francis would want to address the zoning question. I think there was a request for that.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so as far as the zoning, there was no rezoning required for these 5 homes. After the meeting that we had in September, I did contact municipal licensing, and that's why, as it was mentioned by Loft, they did come and investigate. And what I was told is that the homes are owned by the hospital. It's on hospital land, and the services that Loft is providing now in the hospital is being extended to the 5 homes. So the zoning is in place to offer the healthcare services that Loft would be providing at these 5 homes. So there's no rezoning or no special zoning requirement for these 5 homes on hospital land owned by the hospital. And as you know, Loft received provincial funding for the program and for these 5 homes, and to provide the service from the hospital onto the 5 homes that's owned by the hospital.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I recognize we're at 7:53 and there are a number of questions. I think, James, if there's an opportunity, if we've got the technical issues ironed out. We still cannot hear you.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
I just want to go back to, I want to ask all the members of the Humber Hospital, Joe Gorman, Barbara Collins, and everybody else who's involved, the premier, everybody. We've sent out numerous amounts of emails and we've never gotten back. You've never gotten back to us. And you know what? That that instills a distrust in our community that you guys are doing.
James, I'm afraid we've lost you again.
Yeah. I can't hear.
Sorry,
That's
James,
frustrating for him.
we cannot hear you.
Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you again. We lost you after mistrust.
Forget it. Okay, goodbye.
Okay,
Okay.
Mona,
I think we'll just circle back to him a little bit later on then, given the technical issues. We have 6 more minutes. There's Sid.
Hi there.
Hi, Sid.
Hi, thanks for having us. I guess there's a lot of good arguments on both sides. Like, I mean, I do feel for the people in the neighborhood because there seems to have been a lack of consultation. Like, I mean, I just heard about this maybe a month ago, a month and a half ago. I guess to kind of put people at ease a little bit is, what if this ends up being a mistake? What's your plan B with those properties? Like, what happens? If it's a mistake, do we have to live with it for the rest of our lives?
what do you mean by a mistake, Sid? What, can you
Well,
just
what if it
talk a
ends
bit
up
more
being,
about that?
I don't mean to instill fear. I'm not a fearful person. Okay. And I understand the NIMBYism going on. But what if this is a mistake? What's your contingency plan? What's your plan B with these properties? Is it because it seems like you ram this down the community's throat? Okay, and I understand. I get it. We need places like this for these people. I get it. Okay, but I think there's a lot of fear going on because it's 5 houses on one street. When a lot of people feel, especially when they put their life savings in their houses, that they could use these properties more efficiency, maybe spread out this program and not put all 5 houses on the same street. That's my point. But I'd like to know, what's your plan B if this is a mistake, if it ends up being a mistake?
You know, it's a hard question to answer because I'm not sure what you're defining as a mistake. I think our approach at Loft with any program that we run is that we're always looking at opportunities to make improvements if things aren't working. But in terms of mistake, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. And we are coming into this supporting people with mental health issues. We are being very thoughtful about how we match people to this program. There will be some people that are suitable to be at these locations. And again, we're talking about 15 people. And if they are not suitable, we're not going to be recommending people to come to these houses. We very much value our relationship with the community, and we want to be successful.
Thanks, Karen. So I think we have time for, we actually don't have time. We have, we're at 7:58. Maybe we'll just end with one last question. Luciano T.
Thank you for getting back to me. I just wanted to add commentary in regards to the City of Toronto with Francis' commentary that someone came out and did an assessment on the properties. But based on the information that you've shared with me, my interpretation of the zoning bylaw, when you've got 3 individuals who are not of the same last name residing in a home that is zoned R1, that is paying rent, who are no longer hospital patients does not meet the zoning R1 requirements. So I would like to see the supporting documentation that the City of Toronto agrees with the Loft, Humber College, and Francis's understanding of that relationship. Is that understood? Have I made myself clear? And I, again, support the initiative, but I'm totally disappointed with the lack of community consultations that have occurred up to date. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Luciano. I guess that we'll take that under advisement and come back. And
I
thank
look
you.
forward to the comeback because that's what the concern is. I'd love to see the supporting evidence. If we've had an inspector out there, then they've written a report.
All right.
And thanks for muting me.
Thank you very much for everybody's time. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion. Heather, would you like to wrap up, or Karen, would you like to wrap up?
I'll go ahead, Mona. Thank you so much. Really want to hear that people are saying that some are sharing this did not feel like enough community consultation. We are really trying our best to try to hear from people. I'm very hopeful that people are hearing the efforts we have taken to respond to the issues you raised and have raised. And we very much wanted to start the night telling you that what you raised has made a difference. In terms of some of the questions around the zoning, I think we need to figure out a way to communicate and to hear. I think there were some questions in the chat about how do I reach the person that if there's an issue that comes up. I think there's still room as we move forward to how do we communicate with the community and hear as things roll out and we learn together if there's quickly and we can be very responsive to any issues that come up. I think that's a very good idea that was raised, and we will take that away. And there was a question about proof around the zoning, and I don't know, Karen, if you can help with that or if that's available likely publicly somewhere in the city, but I'm not sure if you can respond to that. And then I think we'll close, and thank you people for your time and for caring about your community. Go ahead, Karen.
I think if people have questions about the zoning, they can contact the city. We don't have a piece of paper. We met with them and talked with them, but people are welcome to call the city if they have concerns about the zoning.
Great.
So thank you, everyone. We will sign off. Mona, thank you for, and Deborah, thank you for hosting. Councillor Nunziata, thank you for joining us this evening. We thank you, Paul Mason, joining from MPP's, the MPP's office as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and good night.